25, 40, run, William, run! He's got blockers in front, 5, touchdown! Joshua Cribbs! Snap back, ball down, kick block! They block the kick!
This is the Orange is Oranger Browns podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm your host, Chase Smith, and with me, as always, Browns insider Jeremy Powell. Jeremy, this is like the third episode in a week. What's going on, man?
Right? What is going on? So much of a good thing, right, Chase?
Yes.
We are joined by an extra special guest tonight to help us with our Browns recap show. Chase, why don't you introduce her?
Very special guest. She's quickly becoming the voice of a generation on Twitter. She's the WEWS News Channel 5 digital content producer. Ladies and gentlemen, Camryn Justice. Camryn, thank you for joining the Orange is Oranger.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, very excited. Now, what we like to do, Camryn, is first-time media guest, and hopefully you'll be on the show in the future again. We just like to hear your story in journalism, when you found you loved digital media and kind of your role in that. You went to University of Akron. So how did all this kind of come about in your life?
Yeah, so I went to school, and when I first started going to Akron, I was in graphic design. I took a couple courses, and I realized that I hated it, and that's not what I wanted to do. So I took a break, and I just kind of thought about things that I liked to do outside of just school and what I wanted to make a career, because I didn't want to do something that I didn't like for work.
Right.
And so I knew that the one thing that I had always loved my whole life was sports, and more specifically Cleveland sports. And I was like, okay, well, if I can turn this into something, that'd be cool. And then started going back to Akron for a communications degree, and got involved in their radio station and their TV station, and started anchoring the sports show there. I was the sports director, and it was really cool because it was the first female sports director. I think I was the first female on the sports show in general. That just kind of fueled me. There's not enough women voices out there, and that made me want to do it even more. So started doing that. I was on my sports power talk on Sundays and hosting our sports show on TV. And from there, I just really I was grinding as much as I could, credentialed for as many games as possible. I started covering the Cavs a ton, and then found our way into getting into some Browns games and some Indians games, and I just dove right in. And then I got hired at News 5 right before I graduated, and it's just been up from there. It's been really cool, and they've been super great with getting me into as many sporting events and as many opportunities in Cleveland sports as possible. So I'm at the Browns games, at practices, in the locker rooms. It's been awesome. Excited to see this play out next season and see where we go from here, because I'm hungry for more.
Camryn, you grew up in Akron as well?
Yeah.
Where'd you grow up in Akron? I actually grew up in Kenmore.
Yeah, that's where I actually grew up, on East Avenue.
I grew up on 18th Street between Kenmore Boulevard and Wilbeth. So there you go. That's awesome.
On East Avenue, right by the Duke gas station. And then we moved to Green. So I went to Green High School.
Okay, cool.
I moved there in elementary school, and then moved back to Akron for college.
So
that is
Camryn,
awesome.
As you explore this media career, has there ever been a pinch me, I'm dreaming moment? You're like, oh my gosh, this is the best. This is not graphic design. This is what I've been made to do.
Yeah, every second.
That's awesome.
No, honestly, it really started for me. I was writing a couple things and writing some sports for News 5. But the kind of turn for me, I wrote this open letter to Odell Beckham Jr. Right before OTAs started, and he read it and retweeted it. And
I saw that. That was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a moment where I was like, okay, wait a minute, Twitter can be a thing. It can be a platform. People can hear me. I mean, even the players can hear me and see this. So,
Camryn, let me tell you this where I agree with you 100% about how just the power of Twitter. We started from just nothing, just two guys. We never even met for the first 6 months we had the show. The next thing you know, we have thousands of listeners. We have Mike Lombardi, Phil Savage, Browns players, Browns personnel, local radio guys, all just from reaching out on Twitter. Isn't that incredible?
That's all it takes.
This would
so
not
powerful.
have been possible, right? 10 years ago, none of this would have been possible. There is no chance me and a guy from Columbus could be doing a show where we're getting big-time guests, having people like you on constantly. It's incredible. Anybody that knocks social media or doesn't understand the power of it, it is an incredibly powerful thing. And I think the people going forward that are going to succeed the most in this business are the people that understand how to use it and understand how powerful it really is.
It's so true. That's the beauty of it, is why it's so powerful. And sometimes it is. I mean, it's social media, so sometimes it's toxic and it's horrible to you. But then other times,
quit Twitter 7 times.
I don't blame you. Sometimes it's just miserable.
Unbelievable.
But when it's good, it's great, and it's awesome. And I haven't even met them in real life, but I've met so many people on Twitter that I feel like are my friends, that I have never seen in person. I'm like, I like these people.
Right. One day, me and Chase are sitting here and we're interviewing Phil Savage, and I'm like, how did this happen? We're just two guys, and then Mike Lombardi. How does this happen? It's just incredible. And you're right. As much toxicity as there is, and as much as at times I want to throw my phone against the wall, I think back to none of this stuff that we're doing would be possible without Twitter. So it's definitely the goods and the bads. But I think the goods outweigh the bads if you can stay out of the dirt at times, I would say.
100%.
So let's pivot to the Browns, and more importantly, let's pivot away from our show's accomplishments, because no one wants to hear that.
No, it's fun to talk. Chase, let's do that whole show.
Oh God, no. We have Camryn Justice here, and I want to kind of bounce some questions off of you both. I want to get you guys talking. That's what you guys do best, what you guys are really good at. And I just want to kind of be the middleman here. So the Browns, this is a season recap. We're going to talk about this season one more time, and that's it. We're not going to look back anymore, but this is the final time to look back. So here's where we're at, Camryn and Jeremy. The Browns finished 6-10. They have the 10th pick in the NFL draft. Camryn, I'll start with you. What is one word or phrase you would use to describe the 2000 NFL 19 season for the Cleveland Browns?
I would say okay.
Okay.
It was okay.
You need to elaborate.
Well, you said one word, so elaborating on okay.
That is very true. That is very true. I apologize.
No, so I say okay because as much as it was a disappointment, if I'm looking back to where they were before, it wasn't. It was a disappointment because of all the expectations that were put on them, and for the talent that they had on their roster. You expected so much more. But in all honesty, there were some great moments, and seeing those great moments happen and seeing the promise, to me, made it okay. It wasn't the end of the world. It still feels like there's places to go from here, and I still have hope for next season. So for me, it wasn't just, oh, it's over, throw it away, old Browns again. It felt a little different. It felt like there's still something there. I still saw some sparks here and there, some moments where they showed that they can do this.
And Camryn, I think that's why you're getting a lot of traction on Twitter, because that was level-headed, that was honest, that was not overly optimistic. It was real. You addressed kind of what we thought we had going into the season, and it was just a very calm, chill, I think much needed kind of direction for the team. Jay, I throw it to you, man. One word or phrase to describe the season, and I guess why is what Camryn just called me out on. Jay, what do you think, man?
I'm going to say hectic. If you look back at all the incredibly crazy stuff that happened during the season, I mean, you had Antonio Callaway cut, you had Myles Garrett hitting somebody in their head with a helmet. You had all the drama surrounding Odell Beckham Jr. with the cleats and the getting kicked out of the Jets game down on the goal line. You had the 4th and 9 draw play that the NFL has literally never seen, by the stats, literally has never seen a 4th and 9 draw play. You had the 8 times from the 1-yard line without scoring, which was the first time in NFL history a team had ran more than 7 plays from the 1-yard line without scoring a touchdown. You just had so many strange, hectic things. The season was like a whirlwind. And yet, Camryn's right. Through it all, we still had a chance with 5 weeks to play in the season. right? We beat some good teams. We beat the Ravens. The Ravens rolled off 10 in a row after we beat them. We beat Buffalo. We beat a couple playoff teams. We won that Thursday night game against the Steelers, even though it felt like we lost after Myles Garrett went haywire. So there were moments, but to me, it was just such a hectic season. It never kind of settled in. It was just thing after thing after thing after thing. And yes, there were bright spots, absolutely. And it's obvious the talent's there. I mean, it wasn't like seasons where, I was just thinking the other day, there was years where we were waiting so long for the Senior Bowl because the season was over 8 weeks in. But this year it almost felt weird because the Senior Bowl's already passed, and I didn't even think about it. Because we were looking for the Senior Bowl and the Combine and the draft 8 weeks in some seasons. So that was nice not to, think about that as much. But to me, it was just a hectic, weird season.
Yeah, I think you got it, man. It was super hectic. One of the things I mentioned on the show previously was it was like a what if season. What if we didn't hire Freddie Kitchens? What if this didn't happen? What if? And I know it's easy to play hindsight 2020 a lot of times, but I just felt like this season more than most, it was oh my gosh, it was right there for us to take so many times, whether it was a playoff push or a game against Seattle. Oh my gosh, like there were just so many times where it was like, oh man, if only. And so I'll say what if total is like my answer to that question. Man, I just feel like more than not, this was right in front of us and we did not have it. Camryn, what was your favorite moment from this season?
Favorite moment? Oh man. I think for me, my favorite moment it's multiple moments. It was any time Baker Mayfield found Jarvis Landry.
Uh-huh.
Those made me happy because I expected an explosion from between him and Odell Beckham Jr., and it didn't happen the way that I thought. But what I didn't expect going into the season was to see their connection. So anytime that and it was often, anytime that they connected and had big plays, it made me so excited because I was like, oh my God, I forgot that this is a thing. I was so busy waiting for Baker to find Odell that I wasn't paying attention to the season that he could have with Jarvis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jarvis became one of my favorite Browns this season. Started when he first got on the team. Jay, what was your favorite moment from the season?
Probably the Ravens game because, I have a serious dislike for the Ravens and seeing us run all over them and beat them like we did in their house. I would say if you want to narrow that down even farther, it was the 88-yard touchdown run by Nick Chubb in that game. That was probably my favorite individual moment of the year. And then the Bills game, as you know, I go to every single game. The Bills game was pretty fun. Winning that game, I thought maybe that would, could turn our season around. Almost did. Won a few more games after that. But I would just say the Ravens game as a whole was just a fun moment.
Yeah. Some of my favorite moments was that Thursday night victory against Pittsburgh. Jay was kind enough to invite me to go along, and he has incredible season tickets, and it was just an awesome atmosphere. It was cold. It was great. We looked great for 3 quarters, and then the third quarter we sucked, and we came back and won. Even with the Myles debacle, it was electric in that stadium at the very end. And then
you had a bunch of drunken Browns fans looking for a fight. I mean, yeah, it was electric.
Mocking the Steelers fans as they leave. Carmen, were you at the First Energy during that game?
I was. And I was packing up. My things. Right. I had got my story ready to go. It was already done. And I was heading down to the locker rooms to get sound. And as I'm getting up, there's only 8 seconds left in the game. Mm-hmm. And my head turns. And I'm like, oh, I just sat back down. I was like, this isn't over yet. Yeah. Pulled the laptop back out.
Were you able to go to the locker room?
Yeah. So I got on the phone with one of my bosses and I was like, hey, here's a heads up. Here's a couple notes. I'm going to need you to put this in the story. I have to go get sound, but there was just a giant fight. So we're going to have to include that. And that's the story today. So
that's what's funny, Karen. We didn't actually see it. So I have seats front row, club level, 25-yard line. They're incredible seats. Well, some guy in our section, a Steeler fan, had lost a bet to a Browns fan. So at the end of the game, it looked like the game was over. He had to come down with this giant Browns flag, right, and was waving this flag in full Steeler gear. So we're all going crazy and laughing at this guy not paying attention. And I look out on the field and I see Myles swinging a helmet. Yeah. Like, what is going on? I didn't even fully grasp. I've told this story before, and with Chase, I didn't fully grasp what had happened until I got to my car. And then I pulled out my phone and I started looking at clips. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, this is awful.
Like, it happened so fast and out of nowhere.
Right. I mean, the game was literally over. I mean, we were up
by
2 touchdowns, 8 seconds. It just makes no sense. Me and Chase actually went over this. It was almost like there was a little bit of stat chasing going on, because we had sacked him 2 plays in a row, 8 seconds left. They should have just let it go in the game, get out there. I mean, hindsight, like we just said, hindsight is 20/20. But man, just what an unbelievable end. And another thing in hindsight, in reality, that was probably the end of our season. I mean, we didn't have a pass rush after that. Different team. Obviously without your star pass rusher. So that
completely changed that team.
Exactly. Changed the season, changed the team. There's a reason that a pass rusher is a premium position in the NFL because it affects the game on so many levels, changes the way you do everything. It changes the way you cover. It changes the way you do everything. It can help mask a secondary that was a little beat up having Miles out there. So yeah, looking back, that changed the entire season right there.
So
in 8 seconds, that shouldn't have happened.
As much as that sucked, that was one of my favorite moments. And here's another one of my favorite moments I want to share.
Chase. Sorry for ruining your favorite moment. Chase.
No. Well, because that could also easily be the worst moment, which we're going to get to in a moment. But I want to share another one of my favorite moments. And this might be overlooked by a lot, but watching this, it got me pumped and excited for next year because I think the team won 6 games. I think Chubb almost had the rushing title in spite of Freddie Kitchens. But here's what I'm talking about. Week 17, we're down to the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. There's like 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and Baker Mayfield uses the girth that he has found this season and runs over a Bengals person like in their territory for a first down to extend a drive. I think they just had like a penalty to move it back, whatever. So we're trying to win this game. That means absolutely nothing. And Baker runs over this guy and is pumped up. I remember watching this play. I jumped up and shouted. I was pumped. Like 6 plays later, he threw a incredible pass to OBJ Camryn with that connection that we've been wanting all year. But it kind of stemmed from this crazy QB. I don't want to say run because that's being really kind to Baker. It wasn't a run. It was like a QB like huff and puff. I don't know what happened, but he ran this dude over and it was awesome. And it reminded me of like the stories the lineman told last about his rookie year against Tampa, how he got clobbered and right back up. And this fire that we've heard of from Baker that we really honestly haven't seen much of this year. I felt like he had a lot of energy in the first couple games with the like drums. That was a big deal. He stopped doing that. And this fire that we've heard so much about that the team kind of fed off of, that the fans loved, like we saw a little bit of that in that drive. And that gives me hope for 2020, because if we can find whatever is like not fanning that into flame, I really think he can be a special player. So that moment really is special for me. I'm holding on to that. I tweeted out today, I'm buying everyone's Baker stock. I know those are
stop
really,
with
really
the stock. Can we stop with the stock? You can't
Dude,
buy.
People are saying
there's no such thing as Baker's stock. Okay.
Yes, there is. They're asking people, what would you accept in a trade for Baker? Like that was a thing today. What would you accept in a trade for Baker Mayfield? People.
That is a lot of talk right now.
Yes, I'm buying all of it.
Listen, here's why. Because anytime you change coaches, obviously, there's no one there that is super tied to Baker at this point, right? I mean, no one's career is on the line with Baker anymore. And there's natural speculation with Teddy Bridgewater. Because why? Because Kevin Stefanski coached Teddy Bridgewater, right? So, of course, there's going to be speculation. But Baker is going to be here next year. The Haslams have said he's going to be here. So that's part of the reason they hired Stefanski, because he agrees that Baker can be a player. So Baker is going to be here next year.
Now, that was a huge part of Haslam's presser, which was a fiasco all in itself after they fired Dorsey and Kitchens.
Disagree on that one,
but bringing someone in that would make Baker the best quarterback they can be. Camryn, speak to that driver where Baker ran that person over, and that was special. I'm not just imagining that. That was special, right?
No, it was. And I think that's what makes me so excited about them getting Stefanski. I mean, I had a couple guys that I was looking at hopeful during their search, but Stefanski seems like the kind of guy that's going to bring that fire out. He's great with quarterbacks, and Baker could really use that help. I mean, you saw he had a great rookie season, and then you had those little flames and those pieces and those moments where you're like, okay, this is the old Baker. This is the Baker that we loved. So to have that for a full season would be incredible. I think that would change the way this team runs. Like there was a huge part that was missing with the Browns.
Yeah.
Well, look, this is a make or break season for Baker. I don't think there's no doubt about it, right? I mean, like we said, he's not tied to anyone in the front office now. He's not tied to the coach. This is the season Baker has to be the Baker of the second half of his rookie year. I think he can do it. Obviously, the throws were there.
I agree.
Mean, with the throws he hits, when he hits Jarvis Landry on the sideline all the time, I mean, those are beautiful throws. He does it at least twice a game. The problem was, we talked about this, is Baker got married to rolling right. All he did was roll right. Anytime he escaped, he went right. And you heard Stefanski say in his opening press conference that he already saw a couple things on film that he thinks he can help him with. You know, there were some serious issues. And I've talked about this ad nauseum. I'm going to talk about it one more time. Freddie Kitchen was put in an impossible position. Freddie Kitchens had never went into a season as an offensive coordinator before, and then he's thrust into the head coaching job. Freddie didn't even have his own system. You know how hard it is to develop an NFL offensive system? He didn't have that, and now he's the head coach. So he's trying to develop a system with a guy he hires that he has never worked with before, and be the head coach, the leader of a 52 men and a ton of egos. You know, Freddie did a bad job. There's no doubt about it, but Freddie was set up to fail. And part of that's John Dorsey's fault. Part of that's ownership's fault. But John Dorsey was put in an impossible position. And guess who else that hurt? It hurt Baker Mayfield. You know, Baker did not have any continuity. They didn't know what was going on week to week. He had Ryan Lindley as a quarterbacks coach who really didn't know what he's doing. So there was a whole lot of circumstances working against Baker Mayfield. Now, I think Kevin Stefanski, if you can say anything about him, you can see he's a calming presence, right? He's a cerebral guy. You're not going to see him running up and down the sideline screaming. I'm sure that he already has a system in place, his offensive system in place, which he had a full year with to develop last year. So I just think everything's in line for Baker now. Now it's up to Baker to get back to being the Baker that we know he can be.
Okay, I want to bring it back just a little bit, because I was talking to one of my coworkers, and he brought this scene up from Hard Knocks that I completely forgot about. No, listen, I mean, it might paint this season into a new light. One of the first episodes, Hugh said, "Hey, Six, you ever thinking about coming in with all five there in the early mornings and getting some work in?" You remember that scene? He kind of like awkwardly, like passive aggressively calls him out, but he's asking, like, I know that's not the best leadership style, but man, was that giving us a peek into his work ethic?
Yeah, I think so.
I think there wasn't a lot of accountability, you know. Freddie Kitchens was hired because of his relationship with Baker Mayfield. Mm-hmm. And they were friends, they were pals. And so when you have that kind of relationship and a friendship and that closeness, you don't have anyone to ride you and to tell you you're not doing enough, you need to do more. I think that was lacking on his end. And not to say that Baker Mayfield didn't work hard. I don't think that he worked to his potential and worked as hard as he could have. And I think he did get away with a ton because, I mean, your head coach is not going to tell you what to do. And John Dorsey clearly didn't tell him what to do. So I think Baker was that odd man out on the team that anything that went wrong just didn't fall on him ever. There was no hard actions taken against him. That's the thing you can say about Hugh. That's the one good thing about Hugh was that, they didn't get along, but because they didn't have that friendship, he would say things that kind of motivated him more.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem last year, because you had a lot of people last year with the Browns in the first, their first time in that role. Ryan Lindley, a newer coach, and a big season for Baker, was the one guy he could lean on. And he's not, he doesn't really have that experience. Freddie Kitchens barely had been an offensive coordinator. Now he's the head coach. Who did Baker have to go to? Drew Stanton got hurt, wasn't there. So who did Baker have to go to help him say, hey, I need to look at this? There wasn't anyone there, and that's another hindsight thing. But looking back, it probably would have behooved them to go get an experienced quarterback coach to be in that room with Baker. And I'm sure, if they had to do it over again, they would have done it. But, nothing you can do about it now.
So, Jeremy, the worst moment would be fair to say your worst moment from the season was them hiring Freddie Kitchens.
That's your worst moment, right? Again, hindsight. The worst moment of the season, at the time, I didn't think – at the exact time it happened, the Myles Garrett thing, I didn't think was the worst moment of the season. But that was probably the biggest worst moment of the season. But my worst moment was the Arizona game, because I guaranteed you they were going to win. Remember, I went out and said, there's no way they're going to lose this team. They've lost 6 in a row. They've only won 3 games all season. There's no way the Browns are going to lose this game. What I say, the Browns offense is dysfunctional and unorganized, but it's so talented that they can beat up on bad teams, is what I said. They just put up a bunch of points on Miami. So I think, to me, the low point of the season was that Arizona game, because Arizona was coming off 6 straight losses and the worst defense in the league at the time.
Yeah. Yep. Camryn, what was your worst moment from the season?
Well, I like to agree with the Arizona game. I was there. I flew out. We were in San Diego and then drove over to Phoenix, and we went to that game.
That's
and
nice.
it was not nice. It would have been nice. It was honestly one of the worst games I've seen. It's just an embarrassment. But that wasn't my worst part. I think my worst moment of the season was the loss to the Steelers at Heinz, because it was a game where we went in, they looked great.
They had the lead.
Took a 10-0 lead. Everything was great. And then they gave up 20 unanswered points for nothing. And I watched the team stop.
Yeah.
And it was that moment. And it was such a big game because, it's a rivalry game.
Yep.
And it's the rematch of, you just had that giant brawl in the last matchup at home. So this is the moment. Like, you got to bring your all. And it just went so far south so quick. And for me, that was telling to how the rest of the season was going to go. I saw in that moment, if they can't get this together, how are they going to do the rest of the season? And from there, it was a lot of downhill. There were some good moments, but from that point, I just kind of figured that was it for them.
We lost every game after that. My worst moment, when I knew that there was no hope for the season, was that New England game. And it's hard to separate them from playing New England in New England. But I firmly believe we were the most talented team on the field that day. And to get so excited, to have the game neutralized by the rain, to see Chubb really start to move, and then to have the 3 straight turnovers and just like the complete lack of ability to game plan. I thought that's when it was the most evident, or at least it was confirmed that, oh my gosh, our coach has no idea what he's doing. Not only with their weird play style that game, but also the 4th and 9, we're going to take a penalty. It was just like, that was the game when I was face to face with our own dread for the rest of the season. And Freddie lost me then. I think they should have fired Freddie mid-season and kind of counted their losses. I think Dorsey would have kept his job if he had done that. But yeah, that was one of my worst moments. I agree with Camryn. That Steelers game in Pittsburgh was probably the worst, but that New England game, it was just, I felt so
although I said you're crazy at the time, and I still think you're crazy, you have been consistent in saying that you would have fired him after that game. They did have the 3 turnovers in 4 plays, although one was on the Chubb 60-yard run and it was rainy, but that was it too. They tried to run that weird flip play in the rain. They came out throwing 3 straight plays in the rain when it was obvious that Nick Chubb could get whatever he wanted on the ground. It was just kind of like how the whole season went. It was obvious Nick Chubb could get what he wanted in so many different games, and they went away from the run for large swaths of time. I know they still ran the ball a lot, but it just seemed like there was never a great flow to games. They'd come out every game. They were one of the best teams in the league at first series drives. You know what that says? It says they could put together a plan and they had the talent, but they couldn't adjust on the fly. And, that was part of Freddie's problem. We talked about all year, situational awareness, right? I mean, if he had any situational awareness, they would have beat Seattle because he blundered up the end of the first half. There was multiple occasions that he almost did it in the Buffalo game, the Denver game.
Yeah.
There were so many situations where if we had a competent NFL head coach who understood situational awareness, we would have won games. And like I said, it's a wasted season, but we come back next year. I can guarantee you this. I don't know if Kevin Stefanski is going to be a great coach, but I can guarantee you he will not be overwhelmed when it comes to those situations. The guy's clearly a brilliant guy. He's an Ivy League guy. They got Ivy League guys all over the place now. So I think when it comes to those situations, we'll be better. The rest remains to be seen.
That's my favorite part of Stefanski. I said all season, my problem with Freddie Kitchens was that he always was trying to be the smartest man in the room or on the field. And he He tried to outsmart everybody, and it didn't work. He was overthinking everything. And Stefanski is probably the smartest guy in any room, but even then, he doesn't let that ego.
Unless he's in a room with Andrew Berry and Depo.
Andrew Berry. That's true.
So,
the battle of the brains.
Right. Exactly.
Let's kind of transition here to what this looks like moving forward. Obviously, from everything that we've stated, all of the bad moments, why, Camryn, why the pivot back to analytics? There was such a hard turn back to, we just need football guys doing football things. Why the hardcore pivot to analytics that'll kind of ends this chapter of Cleveland Browns football? It's a new day for sure. Why this hard pivot?
I think it's because you saw last season it was the football guys, right? And you had all this talent, and it was awesome. But what you didn't see, as we just talked about, is that situational awareness and knowing what plays to call, when to call them, what personnel to have, and how to use these guys schematically. And I think the analytics department helps reel the talent in that you got from the football guys and takes that and puts it into perspective and uses that situational football knowledge, when to do something, how to do something, who to have out there, and which guys are going to fit in with the guys that you already have. Because that's the other problem, is you have all these, you bring in guys, but they're not fitting together, they're not working together. And I think that's the analytics of that kind of helped figure out the pieces where you have. So they were all football guys. Like they went all 100% in on, let's do football guys, no analytics. Let's get rid of that. And now it's tough to see it happen, like do a whole 180. I would like to see a nice marriage between the two. So that's what I'm hoping happens, because as well, they're the nerds, they're the analytics guys, but you can't forget that they're also football guys. That they played football. They've done this before. It's not that they're not just some guys that sit at their computer and type up some numbers on their calculators. They played the game, so they have the football knowledge. So I think that's where this is going to go. I think it's going to be a nice marriage between the two and a nice even mix where we didn't see that before. It was either all in on analytics or all in on football. And now it's hopefully this season, you're going to see a mix between the two. So you can get the numbers and you can get the statistics and you can get that right while you still have the knowledge to put it all on the field and make it actually work in action.
Let me comment on that, Chase, real quick. I agree 100%. I think that's where they think Andrew Berry comes in. Yes, Andrew Berry is an analytics guy. He's a smart guy, but he is also a guy that was I think he was 3-time All-Conference in the Ivy League. He's a guy who played football. He's a guy who turned down Wall Street to take a job at the bottom of the barrel in the scouting department at 21 years old, fresh, with an Ivy League degree. He's a guy, he spent, I think, 6 years with the Colts organization before he came over here doing scouting, very scouting. He is the guy that kind of marries the two. And I think that when he was here before, they never really fully let him be the man. And I think that's what the plan is now. Now, let me tell you this. It drives me crazy when I hear a lot of the local media fumbling over what exactly analytics is. So I used to have a friend, Brent Stellick. He was the Browns COO at one point. That's JW's job now, actually. And one day, because I heard people talking about a concept, I actually asked him, I'm like, what does Paul DePodesta do? And what is analytics as it evolves with football? He said, what Depo actually does is create the systems they use to pick the players. He doesn't pick the players. Create the systems they use to run the organizations. He doesn't run the organization. So, for instance, he'll help set the criterias they use to pick the players, but he's not the one picking the players. Analytics, all it is just gathering of data and using that data to make sound decisions, right? So if you know that when you run 46 power with this look against this defense, 7 out of 8 times it's a successful play. It's good for the coach to have that knowledge, right? But a lot of the old school football guys think, their gut feel on a play call is more important than knowing what the likely outcome of the play is based on how many times you've ran the play before that. And I think there's a happy medium, and I think they think that Andrew Berry might be that happy medium. I think that they never had the coach when they had an analytics-based model. They never had the coach that really bought in fully, right? Because Hugh Jackson was the coach with Sashi. Hugh never really fully bought into Sashi. I think Kevin Stefanski is is obviously open to using all the data. And I think that's why, because I don't think he has an ego about his gut being more important than the data. I think you can marry the two. I think there's times when your gut feel might be the best call, but it also helps to know the odds of a play in a given situation, right? So that's my feel on it.
Well, hopefully all signs point to a better 2020. I mean, I want to say it can't get any worse, but God knows it can. And we believe that it's not going to happen. Camryn, thank you so much for coming on the show. Camryn, where can we read your work? Where can we follow you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on any social media platform. It's at Camryn Justice on everything.
With an I. Cammy with an I, right? Cammy
with an I. Camryn Justice, spelled like the word. Super simple. And as for my work, you can find it on news5cleveland.com. We have the website. We've got the app. It's on their Facebook page. We share a lot of that stuff. My work, and then we have other people that do some pretty great work there too. So,
all right, Camryn, thank you so much for coming on the show. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you online.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys, for having me. It was a great time. Go Browns.
All
Camryn,
right.
Thanks. We'll have you back. Come closer to Brown season. How about that?
Let's do it.
Love it.
All right. Jay, that was a ton of fun. Hopefully we don't have to talk about 2019 ever again. I'm sure we will, but we're going to look ahead to 2020. We'll talk about the draft and look to get some more interviews in this offseason. What do you think, man?
All right. Sounds good, Chase. Thank you.
All right. Yep.
Go Browns.
Hoo, hoo.
It's not